Good morning, everybody. Welcome, Data AI Summit 2024. Nice to be here. Again, I love the silent disco vibe. I don't have any music to put on, so you're just going to have to put it with me talking, so I apologize. But yeah, good morning. So, we're going to talk about what is wrong with the Medallion Architecture. I'll admit, this is a little bit of clickbait. It's okay. The Medallion Architecture is not the worst thing in the world. It's not the greatest thing in the world. And we're going to talk about why that is. So who is actually currently using a Medallion Architecture, bronze? Oh, you guys are wrong. Sorry. But you're not that wrong. It's not that bad. I'm going to talk about why that is. So we've got 20 minutes. And I prepped this as like an hour-long session. So we're going to go fast for the next 20 minutes. That's the plan. Has everyone had coffee? You guys ready? Alrighty. Okay. So a little bit of a rewind. I cannot believe I'm still having this conversation, but I've had to speak to some clients of them going, why do we need layers? Why can't we just have a single thing? Can't we just go from our source systems into our data model? And no, of course you can't, but for reasons. I mean, so obviously, if someone's sending you a flat file, if you're receiving some data, I mean, you're gonna have to tell it the schema on read. You can't have a good, strong, analytical data model where you're having to tell the schema each time, and sometimes there's variants and different solutions use a different schema. That doesn't work. I mean, that is like obvious, but it's not well documented. So yeah, we have to have some kind of definition of going, you're a business user, you don't want to have to go to data that's potentially corrupt. You don't want to have to go to data that's not been validated. You don't want to have to teach every single different person how to apply the same business logic. That is the path to having people go, no, profit was 10 million. No, profit was actually 9.3 million. No, profit was 7.8 million. That is disaster. That's why we had warehousing. That's the whole point of things. So hopefully that is obvious, right? We differentiate between the good, curated, ready for business data and the data that's not ready yet. Straight from source systems, it's not ready. So that line between things, going, users, don't go and query my source stuff. Go and query my good stuff, my curated stuff. That makes sense. But then people have tried to do this. Back in the early days of big data, like in the Wild West, when people are charging around on their, cowboy kind of things, they were doing everything as a single pipeline. So one pipeline, and we're trying to validate it. Is it the right schema? Is it corrupt? Have I applied data quality? Have I cleansed things? Have I removed special characters? Have I renamed all of my columns? Have I applied business logic? Have I transformed it into the right shape? Huge amounts of things people try to do in one single data pipeline. And then if it goes wrong, you go back to the start and you do it all over again. If you've got 3, 4, 5 different use cases for that same bit of data, you have 3, 4, 5 different data pipelines doing the same thing. And then you decide to change your quality, you want to change the primary key definition, you want to change how you're joining things, you have to change it in 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 different places. Doesn't make sense. So we're like, yes, okay, let's be smart, let's take the same bit of logic and actually just centralize it. Now, none of that is rocket science. That is all done, known things. Way back in the days of Kimball, of Bill Inman, of all that, the warehousing ideas, back when using an on-premise relational database is what we do, we did this. I would load my data, I'd put it into a staging schema. I'd pick my data up, I'd clean it, I'd put it into my clean schema. I'd pick my data up, I'd transform it, I'd apply some logic, I'd turn it into facts and dimensions. So the traditional way of doing things, stage, clean, warehouse, call it what you will, we had 3 layers in a traditional warehouse. And that is like so known. That is like, this is how we write SQL. This is the naming convention we use for things. None of that is new. Yeah? Everyone happy with that? Make sense? Cool. So, then we had a radical new idea. The guys came along and went, no, ignore all that. Throw away the past learnings. We've got this thing called the Medallion Architecture, and that's going to have 3 layers called exactly the same thing. Bronze, silver, gold, same concepts. That is not new. It is not a revolutionary approach to the world. We're still saying, well, load the data in, and then clean the data, and then shape it into reusable aspects. None of that has changed. The problem is, we kind of badged it, we labeled it, and went, well, you know what? It's a new definition. This can suit all scenarios. Anything you are doing in the world, no matter how complex your business, no matter how many different constraints you have as an organization, just use this and you'll be fine. And that's the problem. The problem for me, it's not the fact that, 3 layers of loading your data is a wild concept we've never heard of before. That's how we've always done things. The problem is people take it as gospel and they go, okay, I'm only allowed to have 3 layers. No matter what my business is doing, I have to do it in 3 steps. And that is madness, utter garbage. So what do? I mean, you can liken it to the world of culinary. You can say, I'm getting my raw ingredients, I'm going out to markets, I'm sourcing my data from different things, I'm collecting all my different things I might want to cook with. You've then got your prep station, you're cleaning it, you're prepping it, you're dicing it, you're making it to reusable components that could go into so many different recipes. And then you've got your actual cooking station, prepping and cooking data, stretching the analogy, but just in case this is a new concept to anybody, that's kind of what we're talking about, right? And then, we have so much marketing. So many Databricks messages out there going, we've come up with the best thing in the world. We are the absolute champions of data modeling. We are the best way of doing things. And there's a bit of naivety in there, right? It is missing a trick. It's missing why we actually do this stuff. So, what are my problems with the Medallion architecture? Number 1 problem, it's not an architecture. It's a naming convention. It's not actually a way of designing software. It's literally just how you label the layers. And that's cool. That's fine. It's not too big a problem. Secondly, what happens if you are different? What happens if you cannot nicely fit everything in the world of your enterprise data platform into 3 steps? What if actually there's some pre-preparation things you need? What if you need to actually massage the data to get it into the right shape? And then you've got your tin layer? You've got like your pre-bronze? You've got your runner-up? What if you're then building a semantic model, a metric layer? You're building out an extra things, and that's the diamond layer I've heard, the platinum layer. My main problem with the Medallion architecture, it's just a little bit too high level. It's just trying to oversimplify things. The way of doing things hasn't changed. It makes entire sense. It's a little bit more complicated than that. So we are going to blitz through why it's more complicated. So my bronze layer. So my raw data layer. The layer where I'm going off to various different source systems, but calling an API, I'm being sent some data, and I just want to make sure the data I've been sent is the right data, right? I'm just landing it. I'm collecting the data, my acquisition layer. How do I make sure that's good? How do I actually make sure it's repeatable? How do I make sure it's running regularly? That is what we're trying to do in the bronze layer. So, bunch of different things. 1, data acquisition. I need to go off, I need to reach into my source systems and say, every 5 minutes, every half hour, every day, whatever the cadence of my loading data, I need to be going and fetching them. But then I've also got now I've got the data, is it the shape I'm expecting? Now you can do that as a single run. You can do this 2 different hops. It depends on what you're trying to do and how stable you want it to be. So that first bit of going and reaching into my source systems, pulling it in, well, most of the time, it's going to be a third-party tool. It's not going to be inside Spark. It's not going to be inside Databricks. It might be. It's up to you. I do a lot of work in Microsoft. Most people use things like Azure Data Factory, go in, read it, land data, and just put it somewhere. And that is it's an alien idea for a lot of people because essentially you're going to a very structured, very known data source, and then you're landing it as flat files. And the amount of like DBA, SQL people who are like, this is madness. Why am I going from a structured data set and unstructuring it? And most of the time, it's because of change, because of evolution. Like, my data types are known. I'm always getting these 10 columns. These 10 columns of these things. My data is fixed. But actually, what if yesterday I had, 12 columns, 8 columns? Today, my data's structured, but it's not what I expect. Now, the problem is, most of the time we're dealing with source system querying. Maybe I'm querying from an API and I've got a rate limit. I'm not actually allowed to go and query that API too much. Maybe I'm dealing with a source system that's like a live application. I cannot go and just take that application down by doing live querying on it because users are trying to use it. So back in the traditional BI, business intelligence days, we had to do all data loads at night because we're not allowed to query it during the day, which is why the whole 24-hour ETL thing came across. But trying to make it so my data always loads. I don't care if it's different. I don't care if it's corrupt. I don't care if it's not the shape I'm expecting. because I don't want to have to rerun that job. So I have a dumb job, a select starge, go get all my data, land it as a flat file, does not matter because I don't want that job to fail. But that means I've then got a separate extra job, which is then going, now take that flat file, is it what I'm expecting it to be? How many columns am I expecting? How should it actually be loaded? Does it have 3 extra columns I've never seen before? And if that fails, I go back to the flat file. I don't have to go back to my source system. So even my bronze layer has 2 steps to protect me, to abstract from source systems to work rather than having to go back to where I'm coming from. So there's a lot of stuff in there. Even the most simple of things in the Medallion architecture, the bronze layer, is actually 2 hops. Acquire data, land it as a flat file. Check that flat file. Is it the file I'm expecting? Has it changed? Has it evolved? Do I have to deal with schema evolution? That is 2 separate steps because we don't want to go back to the source system. So, yeah, in Databricks, we use autoloader. Autoloader is fantastic. It's just a streaming thing. You can go and stream from a bunch of files, and it can do this magical thing of saying, actually, if there's any data I'm not expecting, put it as an unstructured string inside a rescue data column, and then I've got this like elegant agreement of it's always going to load. It doesn't matter if I've now got 15 columns and I was expecting 10. Anything extra goes into rescue data, and then I can make the choice in my own time, in my own terms, actually promote that. We're always going to get that new column, promote it, and now expect it from then on. I'm not going to have to wake up at 2 a.m. to fix the data pipeline that's broken. Hallelujah! It's what we used to have to do all the time. That's why we're building these more elegant, more efficient ways of dealing with bronze. But it means my bronze layer of the Medallion architecture is this. It's 2 steps. Always land the data, get the data into the right shape. And that is one of the biggest problems with Medallion architecture, of people assume it is very literal. Bronze, I have one thing that is bronze. No. Tweak it, tailor it, build it to what you need as an organization, as a business, to actually make sense. My bronze layer is 2 different steps. Cool. Shock horror. Same is a problem when we talk about silver. So silver, the whole idea about silver is taking our raw data, taking our stuff that's come in. The whole point of that raw layer, the bronze layer, is get it, land the data into a queryable state. The data might be wrong. It might have special characters. It might have currencies that haven't been matched. It might have wrong dates. The records might be garbage. I might have been sent absolute utter nonsense that I need to kick it out and not let it into my system, but I don't know in the bronze layer. The whole point of bronze is going, get the data when I can query it. Point of silver, clean it, tidy it, verify it, validate it. So all of those cleansing, validation, the management of data is what we're trying to do for silver. So for me, again, it's 2 layers. It's not always 2 layers. It depends what your organization needs. There's absolutely always a take my raw data and cleanse it and see if it works. So traditionally, my bronze tables, they're append only. If you send me the same record over and over again, I'm going to have multiple copies of that data. Whereas my silver layer, I'm going to merge it into a single record going, this is the current state of that data. This is, if someone went and queried my silver layer, it should be very similar to my source system, just a cleaned and validated version of it, with some audit tables, with a bit of logging on there. But I've not transformed it. I'm not combining multiple tables. I'm not applying business logic. I'm not turning it into facts and dimensions. I'm saying, this is the version of that source table, cleaned and ready for ingestion. And that's that middle bit. Now, some companies have multiple different sources for the same data. Maybe I'm a massive organization and I've got 10 different CRM systems. I need to homogenize that data. I need a canonical definition of what customer is. I've got 10 different versions of that with different columns, different names, different structures. I need to combine that into a, actually, no matter what system it is, this is my definition of customer. We'll do that as a different layer. Not everyone needs that. You don't have to have that layer. It's design it as to what your company actually needs. What do you need to be able to do it? So occasionally, we always have that clean, validated layer. Occasionally, we have another layer, which is around schema homogenization, about getting a common definition of things. So that kind of silver layer, yeah, we do streaming. So we streamed it via autoloader from flat files into our raw table. We stream it from our raw table into our cleaned table. We apply primary keys, we do validation, we do reject rows. Maybe there's rows where if I've got an ID but that's null and that's null and that's null. That's not a real record. Kick it out. Or maybe I want that data going through. It depends on how you're trying to build your analytical system. And then we do a merge. So we can quite happily stream. A file comes in, we land it as a file, we stream it into our early bronze table, we stream it into our clean validated silver table. That's cool. Now, if we're trying to do that then, merging, homogenization, that kind of like next layer, that's going to probably have a view layer. If you're using DLT, you can do that as a streaming table. If you're just using straightforward Spark, you can do it via a view, make some common definition, make a common notebook. Lots of different ways you can do it. But again, that does mean we end up with 4 layers for our Medallion architecture. Again, not everyone needs it, but you design it to what you actually need. So for me, most of the time, if I'm working with a big organization, a big enterprise, I'm gonna land some flat files, I'm gonna clean those flat files and make sure they're the right structure. I'm gonna clean that data and make sure the data is valid. I'm then gonna pick that data up and combine it into a common definition. That's already just the 2 layers of Medallion architecture, bronze and silver. It's just a bit more complicated than that. And then gold, same idea. We've got more. It's just a little bit harder than what Medallion actually says. So yeah, how do we build a data model? How do we manage that? How do we do a performant load? How do we repeat these things? There's just a few things that go into it. So yeah, the first layer, it might be several different hops. It's not just one single transformation, but there might be several different things going. Take my nice conformed data, or maybe I'm not conforming, take my nice clean data, and then just apply some logic to get it into dimensions. Apply some logic to get it actually into the way that I want it to. And then there might be another hop in a semantic model. Maybe I'm using Power BI and I've actually got a load of DAX measures and actually there's just a little bit more logic in another layer, and that's not represented by the Medallion architecture. It's just all in this giant amorphous blob called gold that lives somewhere. Again, we can do similar things. The actual logic of how we do it in Spark is the same. Take a view, take some business definitions, take some SQL, and just build a generic notebook that takes that and applies it and merges it in. That's fairly easy, fairly known, but it does mean we end up with my Medallion architecture is this. And it's just a little harder than bronze, silver, gold. It's not rocket science. It's just a lot of people take those ideas, they take it as too literal. They walk away going, okay, I need to have 3 steps, 3 jobs. A bronze job, a silver job, a gold job. And actually, you need to have as many jobs as make sense to your business is what we're trying to do. So we're trying to go through these things. Yes, I've got bronze, silver, and gold, but actually I've got multiple different layers. So if you talk to AA and you say, can you guys come in? Can you build a thing for us? Yeah, we'll have a landing zone. We'll have a raw zone. We'll have a base zone, baselined, cleaned, validated, all that kind of stuff. We'll have enriched if we need to conform it into a common definition. Curated is our full data model. That's our nice analytical data products that is facts and dimensions ready for consumption. And we'll have a semantic layer. Now, the first one and the end one, yeah, they're not going to be a proper data lake. That is like amorphous giant pile of flat files and something inside my BI tool. But that doesn't mean from an architecture point of view, I have to ignore it. It is still part of that curation process of how I get data to people. And the whole point about the naming is so petty. It is just an argument between nerds about what we actually want to call these layers. But it is so important to your business. If you're giving it out to someone and you say, hey, here's some data, they have to know the context. They have to know, if you say, you're coming from enriched data, it's enriched.customers, well, okay, that data's being cleansed, it's a common definition, but it hasn't had business logic, it's not been tested, okay, I can use it for these things. The whole point is context. Your business users need to know, if you say, oh yeah, it's in curated.fact sales, great, I can trust it. That data is good, someone's checked it, these have got definitions in. If it's in raw, that is not tested. That's gonna have duplicates. It's gonna have problems in corrupt data. It might not be the right shape. That is the main takeaway. It is about communicating to your users, your data consumers, the people using that data, what to expect from that data and how to actually consume it, how hard it is to actually use. So what you call these things, I don't care. Call it 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as your business understand what it means when you say, yes, it's in layer 4, dot, whatever, they know how to consume that data, how to work with it. I've worked with some fantastic companies that had some insanely cool naming definitions. There was a company that was doing, they were building pirate video games, and they named it after the different Cs. And it went from the really early, nice beginner C through to the legendary C where you had to be an absolute master. Great, because their internal business understood what that meant. You don't have to call it bronze, silver, gold if your business would not understand that. If you've already got a data governance process and there's already a definition for silver, bronze, gold, you don't have to then stick with that naming convention. Call it something that makes sense to your business and design it around what you actually need. And that is what's wrong with Medallion Architecture. And that is my rant for this morning.